So I've been reading a little bit of this Michael Myers stuff and trying to cling on to some of his concepts about fascia and how we can improve movement through manipulation of the fascia and not just focusing on things like trigger points and joint capsules. We need to always be thinking, okay, let's attack all the systems, because the body is a system of systems and one is interdependent on the next. So regarding that, say for example you have tight hamstrings, which is the reason you're watching this video, or you think you have tight hamstrings. We need to think about the entire kinetic chain, right? Because it may not be a hamstring issue. And typically what I find is it's not a hamstring issue. Okay, we think spine first and then work your way out to the primary engines of the hips and the shoulders. And then you can start, if you still haven't solved the problem, start chasing down into the extremities and down into the foot or the wrist and hand and that sort of thing, right? So with that in mind, let's give you a prescription for improving this thing that Michael Myers likes to call, the superficial back line. Okay, and that would encompass everything from the occiput here all the way down the paraspinals, coming down into the low back, coming out to the side, down the hamstring area. Does that get you excited? Hamstring area, and then into the calf and all the way down to the bottom of the foot. So hamstring is a key word here. But it's not just always the hamstring. You could be tacked down in any of those kind of stations or curves in the back of the body, and it can cause a problem above or below that area, which is what we see most commonly. So let's get to the prescription. First things first, let's get a lacrosse ball. We'll start maybe at the bottom here. It doesn't matter where you start, but start above or below where you're having an area of pain. But we're just going to start at the bottom just for continuity's sake. I'm going to work my way up a little. Okay, so you're going to get yourself a lacrosse ball or some sort of a mobility ball and start lean. I like to use a wall. I got this one from Kelly Starrett. Is leaning back up against the wall gives you something to push off from, so you can get more pressure, you get more leverage and push into the ball and get into those deeper layers of the foot. And then once you do that, you want to start shearing slowly and purposefully, not just getting on top of the ball and going back and forth and say, oh, I did my mobility and that didn't help. So that guy was probably wrong. No, he just didn't do it with any intention. If you're doing anything in life without intention, then what's the point? You're really not wasting your time, basically. So what you'll do is you'll work your way across this foot slowly. I mean, if you need to count, then count, but maybe set a timer and say I'm going to spend at least 2 minutes on my foot. Okay? As I shear across, maybe it takes me like 10, 15 seconds to get across, but it's not just, the goal isn't just getting from one side of the foot to the other. It's making some sort of a appreciable change in the time that I'm spending doing this exercise, right? So if I find something that feels ropey, stiff, or more tender than the surrounding area, I'm going to camp out on that spot, maybe do some toe flexion extension exercises, kind of doing that sort of thing. You can contract, relax, or you push down with the toes flexed. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then relax, kind of let that ball melt in. You can just kind of try to form your foot around the ball, as if you were just trying to melt that foot to a dome shape over the ball. And you're going to progressively work your way from the ball of the foot toward the heel of the foot. When you get closer to the heel, you're going to plant the ball of the foot and work the distal end or the proximal end. The heel kind of inserts on the that plantar fascia inserts on the calcaneus. Okay. All right. So we've done that. Then we move on to our next station, which is going to be the area behind the knee. Okay, kind of that popliteal space is what we call it. That is a spot where the hamstrings and the gastroc, or that bigger part of your calf, kind of meet. When they cross each other, the hamstrings come down and split, and then they come down attached to the tibia and fibula, and the calf comes underneath it on the inside and splits and attaches to the femoral condyles there. So you've got this almost hand in hand, is the way Michael Myers described it, sort of a relationship here where they can really, they can function really well together when the knee is extended. They function as one long contiguous relationship, right? And when the knee is flexed, just even slightly, it takes that knot kind of loosens up a little bit, and all of a sudden they're more mobile relative to one another. They're working movement kind of on separate planes. So the best exercise for that I'm aware of right now is get yourself a lacrosse ball or something like this, and you're gonna put it just inside of that hamstring and gastroc. So if you were doing it manually, you take both thumbs and just reach inside of the tendon of the calf or that gastroc and be pulling out. And then, like if I was a therapist, I'd have you lying down and I'd be pulling out and having you eccentrically extending your knee like that, extending those hamstrings and gastroc as I'm pulling out on the musculature. But since you can't do that, you can actually get a ball, bend it, compress the knee, and do some circles, do some up and down, in and out, whatever. Do the alphabet, I don't care. But just spend some time tucked underneath that tendon right there. Maybe a minute on each side. On the outside and do the same thing with that knee compressed over it, okay? So that's gonna help kind of not break up fascia, but you're just kind of improving the sliding surfaces of the tendons of the gastroc relative to the hamstring, so that when the knee is bent, they do let go and they no longer are functioning as one unit, but they can function independent of one another, okay? Slide past one another. Another great one, since we're down here, is just getting into that tibialis posterior. So anything in this compartment can take up a ton of the slack if it's tight and limit, something on the opposite side of the compartment or adjacent to it, for example. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna cross one leg over the other, get your lacrosse ball or whatever it is that you have, just feel for your shin bone there and just tuck right up underneath it. You'll feel some really bristly, stiff, soft tissue there. And then you're just gonna jam that ball in and twist it and try and wind up that fascia, keep that pressure on, and then do your thing, okay? Maybe make sure that you spend at least 2 minutes, work your way up to the knee here. Kind of that pes anserine area is a good area to go after. I like to go kind of mid-shin here almost, and then down closer to the to that medial epicondyle or that medial malleolus down here is another good spot where things kind of get tied up, okay? So then moving on up the chain, get yourself a bench or a box or something, and then we're still gonna go after this area around that hamstring and gastroc. So you can work laterally, you can work medially, or you can just go in the middle but come up a couple of inches right where the hamstring starts to bisect, kind of work in that nerve tunnel there. So if I get down on a box or a bench or something, keeping the spine straight, always following that rule. We want to always mobilize in the best position possible. Getting some hip flexion, and then just teasing the tissue apart however you see fit. You can work on rotating internally, rotating externally, but you're just trying to camp out around those two hamstring tendons that anastomose in the middle of the back of the thigh there. You're just trying to peel them apart a bit, make sure that they're able to slide. And you add in some extension, you're kind of exploring the relationship between the gastroc and hamstring again, where they function as one. And that's a good place to be too. You can do anything you want as far as trying to mobilize by tacking down here and pulling the foot up and down. You're pulling that nerve, that sciatic nerve that splits and becomes the peroneal and the tibial nerve. You're pulling that back and forth. That thing needs to be able to move freely in order for you to be able to function. If your nervous system senses that it's tacked down somewhere and you're trying to stretch that thing, it's going to freak out and tighten down all the musculature that those nerves innervate, and you're not going to be able to do something as simple as like a toe touch or a back bend or something. So a normal person should be functioning with the range of motion to be able to keep their knees extended and be able to come down and touch their toes, their fingertips to the tips of their toes. Maybe just a slightly bent knee, it should be super easy to do it. But if you're one of the people that can't get there and you're stuck here, then there's something definitely going on that needs to be addressed. Okay, so we got the bottom of the foot, the back of the knee, we've gone up into the hamstring, and now we're going to go kind of the low back area. So thinking, actually let's go up to the high hamstring, okay? So right up under the glute, where your glute kind of comes in, or your hamstrings come in and insert on the ischial tuberosity. You're just going to get on that tendon, Work your way back and forth. Same rules apply. Internal or external rotation, flexion, extension. You can pin the leg here. Stay rigid at the trunk and kind of tack and floss that tissue back there too. So now you've addressed kind of that sacrotuberous ligament and all that. There's a bunch of stuff in there that's competing for space. So you want to make sure that everything has the space that it needs and it can move freely relative to what's next to it. Okay, so next, then we go to the upper glute, or you can just smash your glutes. So sitting on the ball, again, all you need is a lacrosse ball, whatever you got, softball, baseball, anything. But we want to try and create some shear. The bigger the ball, the more superficial it's going to be. And since we're working on the superficial back line, I want to use something a little bit bigger than a lacrosse ball, otherwise it's going to feel like a spike getting driven into your glute. But we're shearing across, trying to find something tight, adding in rotation. The rotational component is extremely important. It's maybe even the most important component of this, because that's what most of us are losing, is the capacity to rotate the hips. We're kind of stuck in this internally rotated femur position and tibial external rotation, or that tibial torsion, and not functioning normally anymore. So make sure that you get all those tissues pancaking back and forth. Get over out to the side a little bit and out on the back of the greater trochanter. That's a great spot to be. You can do heel slides there. Keep the leg straight and add some rotation in there. And then, make sure you're tracing right next to the sacrum and getting that stuff. Okay, then we go into the back. We want to try and get the upper glute. So if like your pelvis is like a heart shape back here, you want to get that just below the rim of if the rim of the pelvis is right there, you want to get just below the rim of the pelvis, and you want to get above the rim of the pelvis there. Okay, so you can get your feet up on a wall in a deep squat position, or up on a bench or something. But when you get in this position and put that ball just where I said, just on the upper glute, and you're just going to pancake, going side to side, searching for trigger points or soft tissue that's tender or that just feels sketchy. Okay, and you're going to camp out on those. Do some contract, relax, big breath in, hold, squeeze, push, 2, 3, 4, and relax. That's an easy way to kind of hunt out and get rid of trigger points. And a lot of people like to chase it all the way to the side here, try and get into that gluteus medius minimus. Feel free to do so. Now we're going to go up a little bit higher and get above the rim of the pelvis and just kind of work on that QL. And same thing, that thing likes to spasm and shorten that superficial back line and take up the slack that you need to be able to do these kind of toe touch things, or just express normal range of motion on the superficial back line. Then we'll go into the thoracic spine. So one of the things that Michael Myers talks about is that if you're so tight down here and glute down and tack down, whatever, that you can't touch your toes, what'll happen is these paraspinals up here that go straight up and down the back, one compensatory strategy that can happen is people will get this excessive rounding of the thoracic spine, and what we think is happening when we see that is that they can't touch their toes and still can't touch their toes, but they're really rounded at the thoracic spine, is that those paraspinals are actually shifting laterally and kind of rounding over the lateral edge of the rib cage to create more range of motion. We don't want that, right? We want that muscle to stay in its best line of pull. So let's try and avoid doing that. And think about if that happens every time you do it, then just practice this with a straight leg or slightly bent knee and a straight upper back. You should be able to express this rounded back position just once every day, just to show your nervous system that you can still do it, so that these unfavorable changes don't occur. But in everyday practice, say I'm picking something up from the ground, I would want to do maybe even a slightly bent knee and keeping my back straight. It's a deadlift. Guess what? That's exactly how we deadlift, right? So that is appropriate range of motion should be right about where, if you have a slightly bent knee, tibia vertical, you should be able to grab a barbell. So it's maybe like a foot or less off the ground with a straight back and not compromising your spine. So those are some of the things to think about. Let's add in one more thing, and that's the thoracic spine. So working on single lacrosse ball again, you only need this one tool. We're going to put that right next to the spine, somewhere in the thoracic region. If it's below the shoulder blade, if it's so midway down the shoulder blade and below to the bottom of the rib cage, you're going to work on internal rotation, keeping the shoulder back, getting your arm behind your back and pulling like this. I don't care, you can do whatever. You can mess around with like doing active straight leg raise, whatever you can do to pull that tissue up and down, right? But then when you get above the midpoint of the shoulder blade and up to the top of the rib cage, then you're going to want to try and express flexion with external rotations, trying to keep your bicep right next to your ear as you go up, and keeping it close to your head and the thumb back. So doing some breathing there. Contract, 1, 2, 3, 4, and relax. Good. And just smashing that out. Almost every time I do that, I'm kind of working in here in the upper trap, first rib, second rib, those mid trap, rhomboids, all that stuff gets super stiff and tacked down. It ends up pulling the ribs kind of out of position a little bit, and you'll feel those ribs snap back into place. And it's a very, very good feeling. So we could chase this all day. We could chase it up. When you get into that upper trap, you could chase it down that superficial back line of the arm line and into the wrist extension, but we won't do that for this video. But that will come in a subsequent video. So if you enjoyed the information, great. Hopefully it helps you. If not, message me and maybe I can give you some more tips on what's going on with your personal situation though. But if you haven't subscribed so far, please subscribe, and we'll continue coming out with great stuff for you guys. See you next time.